to whispers in the dark. Tonight, we travel to an age when the gods walked close to the earth, when every forest concealed a spirit, and every storm was believed to carry a divine voice. This is the story of a woman remembered as a monster, though few remember the cruelty that made her one. Her name was Medusa. Before the serpents, before the stone garden, before terrified sailors whispered her name beneath moonless skies, she was human. She loved, she dreamed, and she devoted her life to a goddess she believed would protect her. This is her origin. Turn down the lights, settle into the darkness, and listen closely. Now let's begin. Some monsters are born from evil. Others are created by those who call themselves divine. Long before men carved her monstrous face upon shields and temple walls, Medusa lived beside a blue and glittering sea. Her village rested along the southern coast of a rugged island, where white stone cottages clung to green hills and narrow paths descended toward a sheltered harbor. Olive trees twisted their silver leaves beneath the sun. Wild thyme grew between the rocks, releasing its fragrance whenever a sandal crushed its purple flowers. Fishing boats with painted eyes drifted upon water so clear that the shadows of their hulls seemed to float over the pale sand below. In spring, the cliffs became crowded with red poppies. In summer, the air shimmered above the fields. During winter storms, waves struck the black rocks with such violence that the villagers said Poseidon was hammering upon the gates of the earth. Medusa was born in a small house near the edge of the village. Her father was a fisherman named Phorcys, a broad-shouldered man whose hands were permanently scarred by hooks, rope, and salt. Her mother, Ceto, wove ceremonial garments for wealthy families and embroidered images of gods into linen and wool. Both were mortal, poor, and deeply devoted to the ancient powers they believed governed every breath of their lives. Medusa had two older sisters, Athena and Euryale. Athena was strong and practical, with thick dark hair and a voice that could silence an argument from across the harbor. Euryale possessed a warm laugh and a restless spirit. She often climbed the coastal cliffs simply to stand above the gulls and feel that she had reached the edge of the heavens. Medusa was different from both of them. From childhood, there was a stillness in her that made people speak softly in her presence. She listened with complete attention, whether an elder was telling an ancient story or a frightened child was confessing some small mistake. She rarely raised her voice. When she smiled, it appeared slowly, like sunlight spreading across calm water. As she grew older, her beauty became impossible to ignore. Her hair fell below her waist in heavy waves, black at first glance, but touched with bronze wherever the sun found it. Her skin carried the warmth of honey. Her eyes were a clear gray-green, the color of the sea before rain, framed by dark lashes that made her gaze seem almost unnaturally vivid. Her face possessed a perfect symmetry that sculptors attempted to imitate and repeatedly failed to capture. Her nose was straight, her mouth full and gently curved, her cheekbones delicate without appearing fragile. Even her hands were elegant, with long fingers more suited to playing a lyre than repairing fishing nets. Men came from neighboring villages merely to look at her. Some brought baskets of figs, jars of perfumed oil, or bracelets hammered from copper. Others arrived with rehearsed poems and loud claims about the houses they would build for her. Medusa refused them all. Their attention did not please her. It frightened her. She noticed how quickly admiration became entitlement. Men who praised her beauty one moment cursed her when she declined them the next. They spoke about her as though she were a prize placed upon an altar for the strongest hand to claim. A potter once seized her wrist in the marketplace after she refused to drink with him. His fingers left purple marks around her skin. Athena struck him across the face with a clay jug. The vessel shattered, breaking his nose and scattering wine across the stones like blood. That evening, Medusa sat with her sisters beside the shore. The last light of the sunset glowed over the sea, turning every ripple to molten gold. "I wish they could see me without wanting something from me," Medusa said. Athena stared toward the darkening water. "Men see what they wish to possess." "Not all men," Euryale said. "No," Athena replied. "Only enough of them to make caution necessary." Medusa touched the bruises around her wrist. "I do not want to belong to anyone." "Then do not," Euryale said. "The gods gave you your life. It is yours." They believed that then. All three of them believed it. When Medusa reached her 18th year, a priestess of Athena visited the village. Her name was Lysandra. She was an austere woman with silver hair and sharp brown eyes. She wore a white robe fastened at the shoulder with a bronze owl. Her skin smelled faintly of incense, olive oil, and the cold stone chambers of the temple. She had traveled across the island seeking young women worthy of serving Athena, goddess of wisdom, strategy, law, and disciplined war. Medusa listened as Lysandra spoke in the village square. To serve Athena is to devote oneself to something greater than desire. Her priestesses preserve knowledge. They advise rulers. They protect sacred law. They remain untouched by marriage and free from the authority of husbands. Those words entered Medusa like sunlight through an opened door. Untouched, free, she looked toward the bronze image of Athena that Lysandra carried upon a wooden staff. The goddess wore a crested helmet. An owl rested upon one shoulder. Her carved expression was severe but beautiful, promising order in a world governed by appetite. Medusa traveled with Lysandra 3 days later. Her mother wept as she folded a clean robe into Medusa's traveling chest. Her father gave her a small shell he had carried since childhood. For the sound of home, he said. Athena embraced her so tightly that Medusa could barely breathe. Euryale kissed her forehead. "You will be safer among women," she whispered. Medusa believed that too. The temple of Athena stood upon a high ridge overlooking the sea. Its columns were carved from luminous white marble, threaded with faint veins of blue. Broad steps climbed between cypress trees toward great bronze doors decorated with scenes of Athena's victories. Stone owls watched from the roof. Their round eyes captured the sunset and appeared to burn with golden fire. Beyond the temple spread gardens of olive, laurel, iris, and white roses. Fountains poured from carved vessels into shallow pools. Young women studied philosophy beneath shaded colonnades. Scribes worked in a library filled with scrolls gathered from distant kingdoms. Soldiers came to ask the goddess for wisdom before battle. Mothers prayed for the strength to protect their children. To Medusa, the temple appeared to be the most beautiful place in the world. During her initiation, she stood barefoot before the colossal statue of Athena. The chamber surrounding her was vast and cool. Hundreds of lamps burned in bronze bowls, filling the air with fragrant smoke. Athena's statue rose nearly to the ceiling. Her robe had been sculpted to resemble folds of living fabric. In one hand, she held a spear. In the other, she carried a shield decorated with writhing forms. Medusa wore a simple white gown. Lysandra cut a single lock from her hair and placed it upon the altar. "Do you give your service willingly?" the elder priestess asked. "I do." "Do you promise to keep this temple sacred?" "I do." "Do you place yourself beneath the protection and judgment of Athena?" Medusa looked into the statue's hard stone eyes. "I do." A strange breeze moved through the sealed chamber. Every lamp flame bent toward her. The priestesses murmured in wonder. Lysandra smiled for the first time since Medusa had met her. "The goddess accepts you." Years passed. Medusa learned to read ancient dialects. She memorized prayers, tended sacred flames, prepared offerings, and copied philosophical texts until her fingers cramped. She became skilled at treating wounds with honey and crushed herbs. She listened to petitions from villagers who traveled to the temple seeking justice. She was kind to those whom others ignored. When an old beggar came with infected sores upon his feet, Medusa washed them herself. When a frightened servant confessed that her master beat her, Medusa hid the girl within the temple and persuaded Lysandra to grant her sanctuary. When children visited during festivals, Medusa carved tiny owls from pieces of soft wood and placed them secretly among the offerings for the children to discover. Her beauty grew with every passing year, yet her beauty was only the first thing strangers noticed. The priestesses knew her patience. The servants knew her generosity. The frightened knew the gentleness of her voice. Medusa loved Athena with a fierce and innocent devotion. She believed the goddess represented everything the world might become if wisdom were stronger than violence. At night, when moonlight covered the temple floor in silver, Medusa sometimes remained alone beside the altar. She spoke to Athena in a whisper. "Make me useful." The statue gave no answer. Medusa never doubted that the goddess was listening. During Medusa's 4th year at the temple, the dreams began. In the first dream, she stood alone upon the shore. The sea was perfectly still. There were no waves, no gulls, and no wind. Something enormous moved beneath the dark surface. Medusa stepped backward. The water rose like a wall. Within it, she saw a face crowned with streaming weeds. 2 eyes opened in the depths. They were green, ancient, and filled with hunger. She awakened with salt upon her lips. In the second dream, she walked through the temple at night. Seawater covered the floor as high as her ankles. Dead fish floated between the columns. The statue of Athena had turned its face toward the wall. Behind Medusa came the slow striking of hooves. She did not turn around. A man's voice whispered directly beside her ear. "I have seen you." Medusa awakened screaming. After that, strange events troubled the temple. The water in the fountains tasted of brine. Horses gathered at the foot of the sacred hill and stared toward Medusa's sleeping chamber. A priestess found seaweed wrapped around Athena's spear, though the nearest shore lay far below the ridge. One morning, Medusa discovered a dark pearl upon her pillow. She carried it to Lysandra. The elder priestess studied it in silence. "Where did you find this?" "Beside my head." Lysandra's face became pale. She closed her fist around the pearl. "Speak of this to no one." "What does it mean?" "It may mean nothing." "Then why are you afraid?" Lysandra looked toward the open window. Far beyond the gardens, sunlight glittered upon the sea. There are rivalries among the gods that mortals should never attract. Medusa's stomach tightened. Which god sent it? Lysandra did not answer. That night, Medusa knelt before Athena. "Great goddess, if some danger approaches, show me what I must do." An owl perched upon a column high above her. Its head turned slowly until its black eyes faced the sea. Then it spread its wings and vanished through a window. Summer came. The island prepared for a festival unknown Athena. Pilgrims climbed the sacred road carrying oil, grain, carved offerings, and woven cloth. Musicians filled the courtyards. Children wore crowns of olive leaves. The temple steps disappeared beneath white flowers. Medusa led the evening procession. She wore a blue robe edged with golden thread. Her hair was bound with a silver cord, though several dark curls escaped and moved against her shoulders. As she passed through the crowd, people fell silent. Some believed they had seen a nymph. Others whispered that Athena herself had taken mortal form. At the bottom of the hill stood a stranger. He was taller than the men surrounding him. His skin was deeply browned by the sun, and his dark beard was threaded with green. He wore a long cloak that seemed wet, though the day was cloudless and hot. Medusa could not clearly see his face. She saw only his eyes, green, ancient, hungry. The stranger smiled. A wave struck the distant cliffs with enough force to shake the ground beneath her feet. Medusa stumbled. When she looked again, the stranger had disappeared. That evening, she told Lysandra what she had seen. The elder priestess closed the doors of her private chamber before answering. It was Poseidon. The name seemed to alter the air. Medusa glanced toward the painted image upon the wall. It showed the sea god rising from foam, his trident lifted above kneeling sailors. Why would he come here? Poseidon desires many things. I am a servant of Athena. That may be why he desires you. Medusa felt cold despite the summer heat. Will Athena protect me? Lysandra hesitated. It was brief, but Medusa saw it. She must, Medusa whispered. Athena is powerful. That is not what I asked. Lysandra took Medusa's hands. The gods obey laws older than our temples, yet their pride is greater than any law. Poseidon and Athena have opposed each other for centuries. He may be trying to frighten her. By frightening me, Lysandra's grip tightened. You must not leave the temple alone. You must not approach the sea. Pray for Athena's attention. Medusa prayed until her knees bled against the marble. No answer came. Days later, a storm appeared beyond the horizon. It arrived without warning. Black clouds rolled over the sea like smoke from a burning city. The afternoon sun disappeared. Thunder shook dust from the temple rafters. The festival pilgrims fled down the hill. Lysandra ordered the younger priestesses to help escort the visitors to shelter in the lower city. Medusa remained behind to guard the sacred flame. Athena's fire could not be allowed to die, even during a storm. Before leaving, Lysandra touched Medusa's cheek. Bar the doors. Medusa nodded. Return quickly. I will. The bronze doors closed. Medusa lowered the wooden bar into place. Wind screamed around the temple. Rain struck the roof. The sacred flame twisted inside its basin, shrinking until it was little more than a blue tongue. Medusa knelt beside it and fed it dried olive wood. The sound of water entered the chamber. At first, she believed rain had found a crack in the roof. Then seawater flowed between the bronze doors. It moved across the marble in thin black streams. Shells clicked along the floor. Small crabs crawled from beneath the altar. Medusa backed away. The great wooden bar lifted by itself. It struck the floor with a deafening crash. The doors opened. Beyond them, the storm had vanished. There was only ocean. A vast wall of dark water filled the doorway, extending higher than the temple roof. Shapes moved inside it. Fish with pale eyes, drowned sailors with open mouths, horses galloping through the deep, their manes spreading like weeds. Poseidon stepped from the water. He wore no crown, yet there was no mistaking what he was. Power moved around him with such force that Medusa could barely remain standing. His hair hung in black and green ropes around a face, both handsome and terrible. His shoulders were covered by a mantle made from the hide of some scaled creature. Drops of water slid over his skin, each one containing the reflection of a different storm. He carried a trident taller than any man. Where its points touched the floor, the marble split. Medusa retreated toward Athena's statue. "You cannot be here." Poseidon smiled. "Everything touched by water belongs to me. This temple belongs to Athena." "Yes." His smile widened. "That is why I chose it." Medusa's heart pounded so violently that pain spread through her chest. "She will punish you." Poseidon looked up at Athena's statue. The sea god's expression hardened with an ancient resentment. "Athena was given the city that should have worshipped me. She planted her little tree, and mortals praised her wisdom. They forgot who shakes the earth beneath their walls." He turned his gaze upon Medusa. "You wear her colors. You keep her flame. You call yourself hers. I belong to no one." For a moment, the sea god appeared surprised. Then he laughed. It was the sound of boulders rolling beneath the ocean. "All mortals belong to someone." Medusa ran. The temple doors slammed closed before she reached them. She turned toward a side passage. Seawater erupted through the cracks between the stones. It coiled around her ankles with the strength of living hands and dragged her backward. Medusa screamed for Athena. Poseidon seized her. What followed was not an act of love, seduction, or divine passion. It was violence. It was a god demonstrating his power over a mortal woman because he believed no law could restrain him. Medusa fought. She clawed his face. She struck him with a bronze lamp. She screamed Athena's name until her throat tore and her voice became a broken rasp. The statue watched in silence. Medusa's mind fled from what her body could not escape. She fixed her gaze upon a crack in the temple ceiling. Through it, she could see a small piece of the storm-darkened sky. She imagined herself rising through that crack. She imagined becoming a bird, then a cloud, then nothing at all. The sacred flame went out. When Medusa became aware of the temple again, Poseidon was gone. The storm had passed. Morning sunlight entered through the open doors. She lay upon the marble at the base of Athena's statue. Her robe was torn. Her skin was bruised. Her hair was tangled with seawater, blood, and fragments of white flowers crushed beneath her body. For a long time, she could not move. She listened to her own breathing and did not recognize the sound. The temple smelled of salt. Medusa slowly pushed herself upright. Pain moved through her, deep and sickening. Her arms trembled. She pulled the torn cloth around herself and looked up at Athena. The goddess remained flawless. Medusa touched the statue's foot. "I called you." Her voice barely existed. No answer came. "I called you." She struck the stone with the flat of her hand. The statue did not move. Something inside Medusa broke. She curled upon the floor, and wept until her chest convulsed. She wept from pain, fear, humiliation, rage, and the terrible certainty that the world had changed around her while leaving everyone else untouched. She felt unclean, even though the shame did not belong to her. She felt guilty, even though she had committed no wrong. Poseidon's power remained in her memory like cold water filling her lungs. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the temple doors open onto the Black Sea. Every distant crash of waves made her flinch. At moments, she wanted to crawl out of her own skin. At others, she wanted to burn the entire temple to the ground. Lysandra found her shortly after sunrise. The elder priestess stopped in the doorway, her face twisted in horror. Medusa reached toward her. "Help me." Lysandra crossed the chamber and wrapped Medusa in her outer robe. She called for the other priestesses, then ordered them away when Medusa began to panic at the sight of so many faces. Lysandra washed the blood from Medusa's skin. She did not ask what had happened. She already knew. "He came here," Medusa whispered. "I prayed." Lysandra's hands stopped moving. "Athena will judge this." "Will she judge him?" Lysandra lowered her eyes. "Will she?" "The gods must answer to laws beyond our understanding." Medusa pulled away. "That is what people say when the laws protect the powerful." Lysandra looked as though Medusa had struck her. Footsteps sounded beyond the chamber. Every lamp in the temple ignited at once. The priestesses gathered in the central hall. A golden light poured from the eyes of Athena's statue. The marble surface softened. Color spread through the goddess's face. Her stone robe moved as though stirred by wind. Athena stepped down from her pedestal. She towered above the women. Her armor shone with a cold brilliance. Her skin was pale and perfect. Gray eyes looked from beneath her helmet, containing neither kindness nor surprise. The priestesses fell to their knees. Medusa remained standing. She clutched Lysandra's robe around her battered body. For years, she had imagined what she would feel in Athena's presence. Wonder, love, safety. Instead, she felt only terror. Athena surveyed the damaged temple. She saw the cracked floor. She saw the seawater. She saw the extinguished flame. At last, she looked at Medusa. "You allowed him to enter." Medusa stared at her. The words were so monstrous that she struggled to understand them. "I barred the doors. My temple has been defiled." He forced his way inside. "You drew his attention." Medusa's lips parted. Around her, the priestesses remained kneeling, their foreheads pressed to the floor. "I did nothing. Poseidon desired your beauty. I did not ask him to. Yet he brought his corruption into my sanctuary." Medusa's shock became rage. "Then punish him." The priestesses gasped. Athena's eyes narrowed. Medusa stepped forward. "He came into your temple. He mocked your name. He broke your doors and extinguished your flame. He hurt your servant upon the floor before your own image. Punish him." Athena's face remained still. To strike Poseidon would begin a war among the immortals, so you will strike me instead. You are mortal. The simplicity of those words revealed everything. Athena would not punish the guilty because he was powerful. She would punish the wounded because Medusa could not fight back. Medusa looked around at the temple she had loved. All its beauty now seemed rotten. The white marble appeared as pale as bone. The incense smelled like meat burning upon a funeral pyre. The silent priestesses resembled bodies arranged for burial. I gave you my life, Medusa said. Athena descended the final step. And you will give me what remains of it. Medusa tried to retreat. An invisible force drove her to her knees. Athena placed one hand upon Medusa's head. The goddess's fingers entered her hair. Cold spread across Medusa's scalp. At first, it felt like water trickling between the roots. Then the pain began. Every strand of hair tightened. Medusa screamed and grabbed at her head. Her hair twisted around her fingers, moving with growing strength. Individual strands braided themselves together, knotting into thick black ropes. The roots pulled deeper into her scalp. Medusa felt them burrowing through skin and flesh, threading themselves around the bone of her skull. Small lumps appeared beneath the hairline. They writhed. One of the priestesses raised her head and began to scream. Medusa's scalp split open. Blood poured down her forehead. Something pale pushed through the wound above her temple. It was narrow, wet, and blunt at the end. The skin covering it peeled away as it lengthened, revealing black scales glistening beneath. A mouth opened. 2 tiny fangs unfolded from pink flesh. The creature hissed. More shapes erupted from Medusa's scalp. They tore free with wet, cracking sounds. Each birth widened the wounds around her skull. Her beautiful hair writhed upon the floor, changing strand by strand into a nest of living serpents. Their bodies remained rooted in her flesh. She could feel through them. She felt the cold marble beneath their bellies. She tasted the air through dozens of forked tongues. She sensed the heat of every trembling woman in the temple. She heard their thoughts, if thoughts they were. Fear, pain, hunger, kill, hide. Medusa tore at one serpent. The snake shrieked inside her mind. Pain burst through her skull, as though she had pulled upon a living nerve. Athena tightened her grip. Bones shifted beneath Medusa's face. Her jaw cracked. The sound echoed through the chamber. Medusa's mouth stretched wider as the joints were wrenched apart. Her teeth loosened. Several fell onto her tongue. She spat them out with blood. New teeth forced their way through her gums. They emerged long and translucent, tapering into hooked points. The flesh around them split open. Blood flooded her mouth and ran down her chin. Her cheekbones pressed outward. Her skin stretched until tiny tears opened beneath her eyes. The wounds did not remain red. Their edges darkened, hardened, and spread across her face in patches of dull green. Scales. Medusa tried to beg Athena to stop, but her tongue had swollen. A forked line appeared at its tip. It split slowly down the center. She felt every fiber divide. The two halves moved separately inside her mouth. Her fingernails darkened and lifted from their beds. They fell away one by one. Beneath them grew curved black claws. Her spine arched. Each vertebra shifted with a grinding crack. Her shoulders twisted. The muscles along her back contracted so violently that her robe tore open. Medusa's eyes filled with fire. She clawed at them, convinced they were boiling inside their sockets. Athena forced her hands down. No living creature shall look upon what you have become and survive, the goddess said. Something sharp entered the back of Medusa's eyes. It felt like needles pushing through the soft tissue toward her brain. Her vision flashed white, then red, then black. When sight returned, the world had changed. Every living thing glowed. She saw the warmth beneath skin. She saw blood moving through veins. She saw hearts beating inside chests like frightened creatures trapped behind ribs. Athena released her. Medusa collapsed upon all fours. The serpents rose around her head, hissing at the priestesses. Athena looked down without pity. Let your beauty never tempt another god. Medusa lifted her face. A young priestess named Ianthe ran toward her. Ianthe had slept beside Medusa for 3 years. They had shared food, laughter, secrets, and the quiet duties of the temple. She was small, with brown curls and a round, gentle face. Medusa, Ianthe cried. Their eyes met. Ianthe stopped. The color drained from her pupils. A gray stain spread across the whites of her eyes. It moved into her skin, following the branching veins beneath her cheeks. Her lips opened. Stone formed across her tongue. Her scream became a scraping noise as her throat hardened. The transformation passed down her neck and into her chest. Her fingers froze around Medusa's shoulders. The pressure of that stiffening grip became unbearable. Ianthe's skin cracked as it turned to marble. Through the widening fractures, Medusa saw layers of flesh becoming pale mineral. Blood thickened into red crystal. Muscle changed into striated stone. Her heart gave one final beat, then became a heavy lump of rock inside her ribs. The change reached her feet. Ianthe stood frozen before Medusa, her face captured in an expression of desperate compassion. For one terrible moment, there was silence. Then the statue leaned sideways. It struck the floor. One arm shattered. Stone fingers skittered across the marble. Medusa's scream shook the lamps. She gathered the broken pieces and pressed them against Ianthe's shoulder, as though she could return them to living flesh. I did not mean to. I did not know. The other priestesses fled. Athena watched. Medusa looked at the goddess through a curtain of thrashing serpents. Athena did not turn to stone. You made me kill her. I gave you the power to prevent any mortal from violating you again. This is not protection. Medusa crawled toward the goddess. This is another violation. For the first time, anger disturbed Athena's perfect face. The floor opened beneath Medusa. Darkness swallowed her. She fell through cold air as the temple vanished above her. Athena's voice followed her into the abyss. Live beyond the sight of humankind. Let all who seek your face share the fate of your companion. You will be remembered not as my priestess, but as the horror born from sacrilege. Medusa struck the earth. She awakened beneath a moonlit sky. The temple was gone. She lay in a field miles from the sacred hill. Wind moved through tall grass around her. The night smelled of soil, wild flowers, and distant rain. For several breaths, she imagined that she had dreamed everything. Then something moved against her cheek. A serpent slid across her shoulder and stared into her eye. Medusa felt its body attached beneath the scales of her scalp. She recoiled from herself. The other snakes awakened. Dozens of narrow heads rose around her, tasting the night. Some were black. Others were green, brown, or pale as bone. Their eyes shone gold. Medusa covered her face. She could still see through the spaces between her fingers. She thought of Ianthe's broken body. A sound of grief came from her throat, but her changed voice transformed it into something animal. She walked through the night. When dawn approached, she found a pool surrounded by reeds. Medusa knelt beside the water. For a long time, she could not look down. She remembered her old face. She remembered her mother brushing her hair beside the doorway of their home. She remembered strangers praising the shape of her eyes. She remembered how often she had wished that people would stop staring at her. That wish had been granted in the cruelest way imaginable. She lowered her hands. The reflection in the water belonged to a nightmare. Her eyes glowed like green flames behind narrow pupils. Dark scales covered her temples and spread along the edges of her jaw. Her mouth was too wide. When she breathed, the forked tongue flickered between sharpened teeth. The serpents crowded around her reflection. Medusa struck the water. The image broke apart. Birds erupted from the reeds. One flew across the pool and looked toward her. Its wings stiffened. Feathers became stone. The bird dropped from the air and struck the water with a heavy splash. It sank immediately. Medusa fled. She wrapped herself in a discarded cloak and pulled its hood low over her face. The serpents resisted being confined. They pushed against the cloth, creating restless shapes beneath it. She avoided roads. Hunger forced her toward a shepherd's hut late the following night. A single lamp burned inside. She knocked and lowered her face. An old woman opened the door. "Who are you?" "A traveler." Medusa's voice rasped painfully. The woman stared at the moving hood. "Are you sick?" "Yes." The answer was true. The old woman brought bread, cheese, water, and a blanket. She placed them outside without demanding payment. Medusa wept at the kindness. "Thank you. May Athena guide you," the woman said. Medusa almost laughed. Instead, she turned away. A child peered through the window. Medusa saw the boy's small face reflected in a bronze plate hanging beside the door. She pulled the cloak tighter and ran before he could see her eyes. For weeks, she traveled south. Rumors followed her. Farmers found stone animals beside streams. A wolf was discovered in the forest, every hair of its pelt rendered perfectly in gray rock. Shepherds spoke of hissing voices moving through the hills. Medusa harmed no person. She hid from everyone. Still, fear spread. Men began hunting her. The first group found her beside an abandoned shrine. There were 5 of them. They carried spears, nets, and clubs. Their leader wore a necklace made from wolf teeth. Medusa heard them before they arrived. Her serpents tasted their sweat upon the air. "She cannot be far," one man said. "The magistrate will pay 10 silver pieces for the creature's head. Do not damage the face. I heard a sorcerer wants it." Medusa crouched behind the ruined altar. She pulled the hood over her eyes. "Leave me alone." The men stopped. The leader laughed. "It speaks. I do not want to hurt you. Then come out." Medusa remained still. One hunter threw his spear. The weapon passed through the cloak and entered her shoulder. Pain blinded her. She fell from behind the altar. Her hood slipped. The youngest hunter looked directly at her. Terror distorted his face. Stone filled his open mouth before he could scream. The others watched their companion harden from the head downward. His neck turned gray. His chest expanded with a final breath, then froze. His legs became solid stone. The weight drove his feet into the soft earth. One of the men dropped his club. Another attacked. Medusa turned toward him. His eyes calcified inside their sockets. The change moved inward, traveling along the nerves behind them. He clawed at his face as stone spread through his skull. His fingers hardened halfway through the act. A thin crack opened across his forehead. Dust spilled from it. The leader lunged blindly with his spear. Medusa's serpent struck. Several fangs entered his arm and neck. Venom blackened the veins beneath his skin. He collapsed, choking as his body convulsed. The 2 remaining hunters ran. Medusa allowed them to escape. She sat among the dead until sunset. She had killed men who intended to kill her, yet no triumph came. Only exhaustion. She thought of the young hunter's face. He had looked little older than a boy. The world would call her a murderer. No one would ask why armed men had surrounded her. No one would remember that she had warned them. Medusa pulled the spear from her shoulder. The wound closed with unnatural speed. Scales formed over it, leaving no scar. Athena had not even granted her the mercy of an ordinary death. At last, Medusa reached the southern sea. She stood upon a cliff beneath a sky crowded with stars. Far from shore lay an island of dark stone. No trees grew there. Jagged peaks rose from its center like broken teeth. Sailors called it Sarpedon, the Isle of the Dead Winds. Medusa knew it was where Athena intended her to live. A ferryman agreed to take her across. His name was Andron. He had milky eyes and could see only shadows. "You are the woman they are hunting," he said, as Medusa stepped into his boat. "Yes, they say you have the face of death. They say many things." Andron raised the sail. "I have seen enough ugliness in men with beautiful faces. I will not judge what the gods have placed upon yours." They crossed beneath the moon. Medusa sat at the front of the boat, watching silver light tremble upon the waves. For the first time since the temple, she felt almost calm. Andron asked no questions. Near dawn, a storm rose. The sail tore. A wave struck the boat and hurled Andron against the mast. Blood ran from a wound above his eye. Medusa reached him. His trembling hand touched her face. The cloth covering her eyes had been torn away by the wind. Andron's clouded gaze met hers. Medusa held her breath. Nothing happened. His blindness had saved him. Andron smiled faintly. "You are still a woman." Medusa began to cry. "Yes." She guided the damaged boat to Sarpedon. Andron left her with bread, a knife, a water jar, and the remaining sailcloth. "I will tell no one where you are." "Why are you helping me?" "Because someone should have." Those words remained with her long after his boat disappeared. Sarpedon was a place of savage beauty. Black cliffs rose above beaches made from smooth volcanic glass. Pale flowers bloomed in cracks where no soil seemed to exist. At the island's center, a forest of twisted cedars surrounded a deep freshwater spring. Beneath the eastern mountain, Medusa found a cavern. Its walls glittered with crystals. Narrow openings in the ceiling allowed shafts of sunlight to enter during the day. At night, the crystals captured moonlight and glowed like buried stars. Medusa made the cavern her home. She fashioned curtains from sailcloth so that she could move without harming birds or animals. She learned to hunt by listening through the senses of her serpents. She planted seeds from Andron's provisions beside the spring. Months passed. Her human memories remained painfully clear. She remembered her mother's weaving songs. She remembered Athena arguing with merchants in the harbor. She remembered Euryale laughing above the cliffs. She wanted to return to them. She imagined approaching the old house after sunset. She would cover her eyes and call their names. Her sisters would hold her without looking, but Athena knew the desires of mortals. One evening, an owl arrived upon the island. It carried a strip of woven cloth in its claws. Medusa recognized the pattern immediately. Her mother had made it. Blood stained the fabric. The owl spoke with Athena's voice. "Your family searched for you. Poseidon sent a storm against their village. Your father's boat was lost. Your mother died when the sea entered her home. Medusa sank to her knees. The serpents screamed around her. What of my sisters? They live. Leave them alone. Remain upon this island, and they will remain beyond my judgment. Medusa understood. Her exile was not simply a punishment. It was a cage secured by the lives of those she loved. Did you warn my father about the storm? Athena's owl blinked. No. Then you and Poseidon have killed everything I loved between you. The owl flew away. Medusa buried the blood-stained cloth beneath a white flowering tree. She placed 2 stones above it, one for each parent. That night, her sorrow became something more dangerous. For years, Medusa had directed her anger inward. She had questioned whether she should have recognized Poseidon sooner, whether she should have fought differently, whether her beauty had truly invited his attention. Now she understood that every one of those thoughts had been another piece of Athena's curse. Poseidon alone was responsible for the violence he had committed. Athena alone was responsible for punishing the innocent. The shame belonged to them. Medusa would carry it no longer. She walked to the shore and faced the sea. Poseidon. The water darkened. Poseidon. Waves gathered beneath a cloudless sky. The sea god rose from the surf. He appeared amused. You called me. Medusa removed her veil. Poseidon looked into her eyes. Nothing happened. He was immortal. Even Athena's curse could not hold a god accountable. You have changed, he said. You did this. Athena did this. You gave her the excuse. Poseidon stepped onto the shore. Medusa's serpents bared their fangs. You were beautiful before, he said. There is beauty in you still, though it has become a sharper thing. Medusa's claws dug into her palms. Do you remember what you did? I have known countless women. The casual cruelty of his answer struck harder than any blow. To you, it was nothing. To a god, mortal lives pass like foam upon the waves. Medusa approached until seawater touched her feet. To me, it is the dividing line through my life. There is everything I was before you, and everything I became after. Poseidon lifted one hand. The snakes recoiled. I could ease your loneliness. Medusa laughed. The sound was raw and terrible. You still believe this is desire. She seized his wrist. The snakes struck at his arm, burying their fangs in divine flesh. Black venom ran from the wounds. Poseidon's blood fell into the water, glowing blue beneath the surface. The sea exploded. A wave struck Medusa and threw her across the beach. Her bones broke against the rocks. Several serpents were crushed beneath her skull. Poseidon stood over her, his face transformed by rage. The earth shook. You forget what you are. Medusa pushed herself upright. Her broken ribs moved beneath her skin. They slid back into place with wet, cracking sounds. No, she said. I remember exactly what I am. She looked into his immortal eyes. I am the evidence of what you did. Poseidon raised his trident. Medusa did not look away. If he killed her, her suffering would end. The sea god hesitated. Killing her would not erase her. It would confirm that he feared the truth carried in her ruined face. Poseidon lowered the weapon. You will be forgotten. He vanished into the waves. Medusa remained upon the shore. He remembered me, she whispered. It was not justice, but it was the first wound she had given him. Years passed. Sailors eventually discovered Sarpedon. Some arrived by accident. Medusa hid until they left. Others came seeking the monster. Stories of her beauty had survived alongside stories of her curse. Kings offered fortunes for her head. Warriors believed killing her would make their names immortal. Sorcerers wanted her blood. Priests wanted her eyes. Men who had never seen her spoke confidently about the evil inside her. The statues multiplied. Medusa placed those who came to murder her along the northern shore. There stood a prince with a sword raised above his head, his stone mouth shouting a heroic proclamation no one would ever hear. Beside him crouched an assassin, frozen while reaching for a poisoned dagger. A pirate captain stood with both hands around the throat of one of his own sailors, having used the man as a shield. Time and weather damaged them. Rain softened their faces. Wind erased their names. Roots grew through cracks in their bodies. One statue fell from the cliff during a storm. It shattered upon the rocks below, exposing a stone skull, stone ribs, and a heart rendered in dark red crystal. Not every death was deserved. A young sailor once wandered into Medusa's garden while searching for fresh water. She called for him to stop. He turned instinctively. His expression froze in surprise rather than fear. Medusa caught the statue before it struck the ground. She carried him into the cave and placed him beneath an opening where sunlight would touch his face each morning. I am sorry, she told him every day for a year. She hated Athena most for those deaths. The goddess had made Medusa's very existence dangerous, then allowed the world to blame her for the danger. Medusa began carving names beneath the statues. For those she did not know, she carved a single word: remembered. She would not let them become nameless trophies. Her serpents became her only constant companions. At first, their voices were little more than impulses moving through her skull. Over time, they developed distinct shapes within her mind. One warned her of approaching ships. One slept coiled against her neck. One hissed whenever Athena's owls appeared. One remembered songs Medusa had believed forgotten. On quiet evenings, it swayed to the rhythm of her mother's weaving hymns. The creatures were part of her curse, yet they had also been born through her agony. Medusa could not hate them without adding pieces of herself. She named them Nyx for the black serpent that watched the stars, Thalia for the small green snake that seemed drawn to flowers, Aster for the pale serpent with a star shaped marking above its eyes. One serpent bore a white pattern around its neck, resembling the robes of Athena's priestesses. Medusa named it Ianthe. Centuries seemed to gather around Sarpedon. Medusa did not age. Her sisters grew older somewhere beyond the sea. She could not visit them. She sent messages through Andron whenever the blind ferryman returned, though she never allowed him to risk the journey often. Ctheno and Euryale sent small pieces of home, a jar of olive oil, a carved shell, a lock of their hair, a letter written by Euryale, and marked by places where tears had blurred the ink. We never believed the stories about you. We know who you were. We know who you are. No curse can make you less our sister. Medusa pressed the letter against her heart. The snakes lowered their heads. She wept until dawn, when Andron eventually stopped coming. Medusa knew that time had taken him. She built a stone cairn upon the shore despite having no body to bury. Beside it, she placed a carving of a small boat. The world beyond Sarpedon changed. Kings died. Cities burned. Children became conquerors, and conquerors became dust. Yet the tale of Medusa spread farther with every generation. In the stories told by men, Poseidon's crime disappeared. Athena's punishment became an act of righteous wisdom. Medusa was described as a creature born with tusks, claws, scales, and an appetite for human blood. Some storytellers claimed she lured men to the island with songs. Others said she decorated her cave with bones and drank from their skulls. No one spoke of the priestess who treated the feet of beggars. No one spoke of Ianthe. No one spoke of a young woman calling to her goddess while the sacred flame died. Medusa listened to sailors repeating these tales aboard passing ships. Each lie stripped another fragment from the woman she had been. She began carving her own history into the cavern walls. She carved the fishing village and the little house near the harbor. She carved Phorcys holding a net and Ceto seated at her loom. She carved Ctheno with a broken jug in her hand and Euryale standing above the gulls. She carved the temple in perfect detail. She carved Poseidon entering through a wall of water. She carved Athena placing one hand upon the head of her wounded servant. Across the final wall, she carved Ianthe reaching toward her. Medusa worked until her claws broke and grew again. The walls became her testimony. Athena visited once more. The goddess appeared at sunset upon the highest cliff. She wore armor and carried her spear. An owl circled above her helmet. Medusa climbed from the cave. She did not kneel. Athena surveyed the stone figures along the shore. You have created a kingdom of death. You created it. You remain consumed by resentment. I remain alive. That is not the same thing. Athena studied her. The goddess appeared unchanged. Her face remained flawless, untouched by time or regret. You could have accepted your fate with dignity. Medusa's serpents rose. Dignity is a word the powerful use when they want the wounded to suffer quietly. Athena tightened her grip upon her spear. You still blame me for Poseidon's act. I blame him for what he did. I blame you for what you did. I made you feared. You made me unable to receive kindness without killing the person who offered it. I made you powerful. You made me lonely. Athena stepped closer. I could destroy you. Yes. Medusa looked directly into the goddess's gray eyes. But you cannot prove me wrong. For a moment, something moved behind Athena's expression. Not remorse. Athena's pride was too deeply rooted for remorse. It was recognition. The goddess saw that Medusa was no longer the frightened priestess kneeling beneath her hand. The punishment intended to silence her had created a witness who could not die. Athena vanished in a burst of white light. Medusa stood alone upon the cliff. Far below, waves broke against black rocks. White birds wheeled through the evening sky. The setting sun spread crimson and gold across the sea. For the first time in many years, Medusa uncovered her face without shame. There was no one nearby to harm. She allowed the wind to move across her scales. The serpents lifted their heads and tasted the salt air. She thought of the girl she had once been, that Medusa had believed goodness would be rewarded. She had believed devotion earned protection. She had believed divine wisdom could not exist beside cruelty. The woman standing upon the cliff knew better. Yet the gentle priestess had not vanished completely. She remained in every grave Medusa tended. She lived in every name carved beneath a statue. She survived in the white flowers planted above the blood-stained cloth of Medusa's mother. The monster and the woman were not separate beings. They were both Medusa. Grief had not made her weak. Rage had not made her evil. The grotesque face, reflected in still water, did not erase the humanity within it. As night gathered over Sarpedon, Medusa saw a ship approaching. Its sail bore the emblem of a distant king. A single warrior stood at the bow. At his side hung a polished shield bright enough to catch the dying light. Athena's owl circled above the mast. Medusa watched in silence. She understood what was coming. Athena could not admit that she had wronged Medusa, so she would send mortal men to finish the punishment. They would arrive with gifts from gods, call themselves heroes, and claim that killing a woman in her sleep was an act of courage. If they succeeded, poets would sing of their victory. They would hold Medusa's severed head above cheering crowds. Her face would decorate shields, palaces, coins, and temples. They would use her pain as a weapon while erasing the reason for her anger. The serpents hissed. Medusa descended from the cliff and entered the cavern. She passed the carvings of her family. She touched Ianthe's stone face. Then she stood before the wall that showed Athena's hand buried in her hair. With one claw, Medusa carved a final message beneath it. I was not born a monster. Outside, the ship drew nearer. Thunder rolled across the sea. Medusa entered the deepest chamber and sat among the names of the dead. She was frightened. She did not deny it. Courage had never meant the absence of fear. It meant refusing to let fear speak the final word. She closed her eyes and listened to the serpents breathing around her. She remembered her mother's hands, her father's shell, her sisters beside the golden sea, the laughter of Ianthe beneath the temple columns. These memories belonged to her. Neither Poseidon nor Athena could take them. When footsteps eventually echoed at the mouth of the cavern, Medusa opened her burning eyes. The darkness recoiled. The snakes rose like a crown, and the woman whom the gods had tried to break stood ready to face the story they had written for her. Remember this when you hear her name. Medusa was not cursed because she was wicked. She was cursed because a powerful god harmed her. And another powerful god found it easier to punish the wounded woman than confront the one who had wounded her. Her face did not reveal the evil inside her. It revealed the cruelty that had been inflicted upon her. Behind every serpent was a strand of hair, once brushed by a loving mother. Behind every scale was a piece of skin, once warmed by the island sun. Behind the terrible eyes that turned flesh to stone lived a woman who had once devoted those same eyes to sacred texts, frightened children, and the goddess she trusted. The gods called Medusa a monster. Men called her a monster. History called her a monster. But monsters do not always wait in distant caves. Sometimes they sit upon thrones beneath the sea. Sometimes they stand upon marble pedestals holding spears. Sometimes they commit terrible acts and then condemn their victims for refusing to remain silent. Medusa's sorrow became legend. Her rage became a warning, and her face became immortal. Thank you for listening. If this dark retelling of Medusa's origin drew you into its world, leave a like and subscribe for more terrifying myths, haunted legends, and gruesome stories from the shadows of the ancient past. Tell me in the comments whether you believe Medusa was truly a monster, or whether the real monsters were the gods who created her. Until next time, keep the lights low, watch the darkness carefully, and remember that the most frightening creatures are not always the ones with serpents for hair. Sometimes they are the ones the world has been taught to worship. Good night.
Whispers of a love so true, painting dreams of me and you. And I'll hold you close in this moment.